Hello world and welcome to F1 Help once again with your host Lazarus, and in this week is going to be another race week behind us segment, of course, for the week behind us, and of course, like the previous time, there is a lot to get into, so then without further ado, let's jump straight into the race week behind us. So, like in the previous video, before we get to any actual racing, there is a tribute to be paid. This time it is for a Swedish former Formula 1 driver, Reine Wisell, who was best known, if you will, for his first ever Formula 1 race, where in his Lotus he managed to finish third in the 1970 United States Grand Prix. This was, of course, highlight of his Formula 1 career. He never tasted champagne again during his time there, and in 1975 he moved over to the European GT Championship, where he won the title. Of course, he was also a Swedish Formula 3 champion and was part of what was described as the best ever Formula 3 race in 1969, battling out with his countryman Ronnie Peterson. Mr. Wisell died on the 20th of March 2022 at the age of 80 in his home in Thailand. So, a little bit of a somber note as well. Former FIA president and safety advocate Max Mosley, who passed away in May last year, I think, is now has been reported now that he was found with a gunshot wound to the head, presumably self-inflicted, after he found out that he was suffering from terminal cancer. So, a little bit of a sad ending to one of the, well, iconic people in Formula 1 and motorsport in general. So for Max Mosley and for Reine Wisell, of course, may they rest in peace. With those somber news out of the way, let's then move on to some other news that happened in the previous week. Six-time MotoGP champions Marc Marquez's season only got from bad to worse after he, of course, suffered that heavy crash fall, if you will, in Indonesia, when he, fell off his bike, was launched into the air and suffered a concussion. He is physically okay, of course, he is fit and everything is fine with him. However, he has been reported since to suffer from double vision. And I guess vision is important when you're driving a motorcycle at around 250 kilometers an hour, which rules him out for the Argentine Grand Prix this coming week. He will, of course, be replaced by the test driver for the team, German rider Stefan Bradl. So then, in Nascar, Brad Keselowski's team, and indeed the driver himself, were fined, Keselowski and the teams were fined by being stripped of 100 points that he scored, and Keselowski as well has been stripped of the 10 playoff points he might and will have gained during the course of the season, with the team themselves being fined $100,000. The reason for this fine, or rather punishment, if you will, is because they were found to have modified a spec part, which is mandated by NASCAR and must not be meddled with. All in all, it is a serious offense, so NASCAR has took it upon themselves to, dish out justice, and I guess as they should. Of course, Keselowski and the team have appealed this decision, but NASCAR has rejected those appeals and stuck by their original verdict. Then, Formula 1 president Stefano Domenicali has reportedly said that he is looking into expanding the Formula 1 calendar to include 30 races. Currently, we are at 22, 23rd is yet to be confirmed, and with rumors about Las Vegas hosting a night race in 2023, this is just like one stepping stone to Domenicali's wishes, which, for us racing fans would be awesome. I mean, we love to watch races, we love to watch as many of them as possible. However, for the team members, more specifically mechanics and other crew members as well, it might not be so easy as, look at this season. So the Formula 1 just went to Saudi Arabia, then in 2 weeks' time it's Australia, after Australia they're going to Italy, after Italy to United States, and then back to Europe and Spain. So logistics are a little bit of a nightmare in that case as well. So whatever you think about this, of course, feel free to let me know in the comments. And then with the final news segment, if you will, final news, is that Formula W Series just signed their youngest ever drivers. Those two drivers would be Bianca Bustamante of the Philippines and Juju Noda of Japan. Now, Juju Noda was quite famous a couple of years ago when he set some insane lap time in an old Formula 1 car, and she was, well, touted as being the next Formula 1 female racer. Of course, she's still 16 years old, so there is time for her, definitely. She's currently competing in the Danish Formula 4 Championship. Well, she has been posting some modest results, of course, nothing too bad. Of course, Bianca Bustamante will be the first Filipina, or Filipino in general, in Grand Prix racing. I think there was in IndyCar, there was one Filipino driver. But yes, those would be the racing news. Then let's move on to the first event that I'm going to cover, way down under, in Australia for their Supercars Championship. So the Australian Supercar Championship held the second round of their season in Tasmania, which is known as Tasmania Super Sprint, which was absolutely dominated by Shane van Gisbergen. Now, the man has actually won 4 of the current 5 races that have been held, and of course has an immense lead in the championship, more specifically 562 points compared to his nearest rival Anton de Pascal, who has 495, and then behind them we have Will Davison, Chaz Mostert, and Brody Kostecki, I suppose, sounds Polish to me. So of course at this point, I mean, Van Gisbergen is known to be a very talented man, so it's, of course, I guess it's of no surprise that he is winning, but I mean, at this point he has like 85% win rate, I mean, which is absolutely insane. So unfortunately I don't have live coverage of the supercars as well here where I am, so all I had to go by were the highlights, and yet since I still don't know every single driver competing there, this would be all that I have to say about the V8 supercars. So pretty thorough, I know. So now let's move on then to open wheelers. Let's move to Formula 2 first of all. So Formula 2, and for that matter the main series Formula 1 as well, have visited Saudi Arabia for the second running of the country's Grand Prix, which of course raised many concerns about the safety of all involved parties. Namely because on Friday during practice for Formula 1 there was a missile strike on the Aramco facilities just some 8 kilometers away from the actual racing track. This is important, of course, aside from it being a missile strike. Aramco is one of the main sponsors of Formula 1. They are a Saudi oil company who have been developing fuel, sustainable fuel for Formula 1 as well. So in lieu of this event, Formula 1 held a 4-hour-long meeting with the drivers, team principals, executives and race organizers to discuss safety. Ultimately, they reportedly unanimously agreed that the race will go on. So for Formula 2, the racing was quite incident-packed. During practice, I think, Turkish driver Cem Bolubashi actually crashed and suffered a concussion, which then caused his team to withdraw him from the entire event. And during the sprint race itself, Belgian driver Amaury Cordil also had a heavy crash and also had to be withdrawn from the main event, which is the feature race. Now, in sprint race, I think was generally more incident-packed than the feature race. And again, oh man, this guy cannot catch a break this season, Dennis Hauger. I mean, there was an incident on the actual start-finish line, so the safety car will then lead the drivers through the pit lane until the incident has been cleared up. So Hauger committed to going into the pits, and in the last moment Formula 2 reversed their decision and said that it was okay to actually go through the straight finish line. So Hauger, who already committed to the pit lane, could not return to the track, so he went through the pit lane, which was in the meantime closed. And for his efforts he received a penalty from Formula 2. So even though they were the ones who, again, rightfully said that it needs to go through the pit lane, when he's already committed, just reversed the decision, and he got penalized for it. So yeah, not ideal. The weekend also wasn't nothing to write home about for Jake Hughes, who finished originally the sprint race in third place, but was then disqualified due to a technical infringement. Now, I have tried to search to see what this actual infringement was, but as of time of recording I wasn't able to find any reliable source, so let's just leave it then as a technical infringement, which ruined Hughes' day. For the feature race, fortunately, it was less incident-packed than the sprint race. I don't think there were any red flags actually in this race, which was won by Brazilian Felipe Drugovich, or maybe Drugovic. His heritage sounds Slavic, who is now also the championship leader as well. Now, while Drugovic did win this race of merit, it nearly happened to Liam Lawson as well. He was leading the race, and again, like in Bahrain, apparently some gremlins have infiltrated the Formula 2 paddock and caused Lawson's front left wheel not to be attached properly, so helpless Lawson just lost the wheel and was parked near the entrance to the pit lane, and he was forced to retire from the race. So this win actually sees Drugovic leading the standings in Formula 2, followed by Liam Lawson, with Richard Verschoor, Dutch driver, in third, Juri Vips of Estonia in fourth, and the previous feature race winner Theo Pourchaire, who actually had a abysmal weekend in Saudi Arabia. He finished quite on the order in the sprint race, and in the feature race, while running out of the points, I think he was maybe 15th or something like that. His car gave way and he had to retire from the race. This unfortunate Saudi Arabian weekend sees Pourchaire as the loser of the day, with the winner, Felipe Drugovich, actually being winner of the day. So I went with two safe picks here. Now, I need to be said that Hauger's luck changed, fortunately. In this race, he finished sixth, and he finally was able to get some points, and hopefully this will kickstart his season. So then, with Formula 2 now out of the way, let's move on to the main event. Nothing less controversial, Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for Formula 1. So, like I said, amidst all of the safety concerns, Formula 1 has decided to go through with the second Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and the first part of qualifying was marked by a Nicolas Latifi crash, which red flagged the session for a little bit, but it was like a small impact. Maybe he just lost the rear end and just slightly tapped the wall. It wasn't really a heavy crash, but the same couldn't be said about Mick Schumacher in the Haas, who suffered a mighty crash, 33G crash in qualifying 2, and it took the medical personnel and stewards a good 10 to 15 minutes to extract him out of his car. Schumacher is fine. Actually, when his car came to a stop, he was actually lifting his visor, moving his hands around, switching the car off. So yeah, he was fine to begin with, but I guess due to the safety concerns and just to make sure everything was done properly, they took a little bit longer to extract him from the car. Fortunately, this was the last incident of, I guess, the entire weekend, and Ferrari actually looked set to do another clean sweep of the front row. However, nobody bothered to tell Sergio Perez that, so he actually snuck by and snatched pole from Charles Leclerc, and took his first ever pole position in Formula 1, and also the first ever pole position for Mexico in general. And then the very next day, the race got off to a decent start. No really major changes there. Perez kept his lead. Leclerc was second. However, Max Verstappen, who started fourth, was able to jump Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari to move up to third. And Perez looked quite in control of the race until crash by, ominously, Nicolas Latifi again in the Williams brought out the safety car. Now, Perez has pitted before the safety car was called out, so he rejoined in fourth, which then in turn meant that Leclerc, Verstappen and Sainz could all pit and effectively gain position on Perez, which happened. However, the same couldn't be said about Leclerc. So, we all know how good both he and Max Verstappen are, and they proved it once again this weekend in Saudi Arabia with that epic battle that they had. You saw everything you needed to see. Overtaking, dive bombs, just regular sending it down the chicane, DRS mind games as well, that famous lockup from both Leclerc and Verstappen. just to get DRS for the main straight. Ultimately, Verstappen gathered his momentum, gathered his experience and his talent, and then snuck past Leclerc on the final straight in 5 laps to go. Leclerc did try to mount an attack, and the race again was also pretty much a disappointment, a disaster for Lewis Hamilton, who was only able to start 16th on the grid. He only managed to finish 10th, and in a race that saw only 13 finishers, so quite off the pace for the reigning, well, not reigning, but 7-time Formula One world champion, which actually qualifies him to be a loser of the day. Honestly, this race was a disaster. He got passed by Kevin Magnussen in the Haas as well. So if anybody told me at this point last year that we'll be seeing Haas overtaking Mercedes on merit, I would never believe that, honestly. But again, Magnussen with another strong showing for Haas, keeping the momentum going, and of course keeping the hopes alive for the American outfit. Of course, Mick Schumacher was withdrawn from the race, of course on health concerns. He has since reported to be fine and will be ready to race in 2 weeks' time in Australia. So that at least was a good thing. And the later stage of the race also saw one little bizarre incident when first Fernando Alonso in his Alpine lost the car, lost drive, and had to cruise it to get to the pit lane to park the car. However, just slightly ahead of him, Daniel Ricciardo was also suffering from the same issue. Both of them actually stopped right in the entrance of the pit lane, and at that point Hamilton, who was running in 6th and on old tires, needed to pit in order to, well, get the fresh set of tires and just hold on until the end. No safety car was brought out this time, only the virtual safety car. However, since both of them were located on the entrance of the pit, Hamilton wasn't able to pit, as in that situation the pit lane is closed completely. Another unfortunate loser in this race was Valtteri Bottas, who again had a strong showing of pace, but also had to retire on the same lap that Alonso and Ricciardo did. So, for his efforts, Max Verstappen gets the driver of the day easily. He started 4th. He is the reigning world champion. He's a beast behind the wheel, but still, he started 4th and had to work for it rather than, just going ahead and cruising till the end. So, this result actually still sees Charles Leclerc leading the championship, followed by Carlos Sainz, and then Verstappen, then George Russell, who in this race finished 5th, and Lewis Hamilton in 5th position in the general standings. Now, again, I have to mention a pretty solid drive, again by the Chinese rookie Guan Yu Zhou, who finished 11th, so out of the points. However, he did have to serve 2 5-second penalties in the pit lane. The first one because I think he caused a collision or overtook somebody off the racing of the circuit, and the second one because the first one didn't go so well. His team botched the first one, so he had to make 2 penalties, and still was able to finish in front of Nico Hülkenberg in the Aston Martin, and of course Lance Stroll and Alex Albon, who, well, technically didn't finish the race. So again, one good showing from the Chinese rookie. Now we're going to move on to a race that completely made me forget that Formula One was even on just a couple of hours prior. Let's take a look at the Texas Grand Prix for NASCAR. As is the case with Formula One, the NASCAR feeder series, if you want to call them that, also visited the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas for the Texas Grand Prix. Of course, they all had different names. I'll put them in the table on this side, I think. Now, like I said, for the Truck and Xfinity series, I don't have coverage of it, so I have to rely on highlights. And the Xfinity series race didn't really have anything to show, basically. It was just a normal, regular NASCAR race, nothing too special. However, the Trucks race, what caught my attention was that, I don't know how to call it, curling attempt, if you will, from Alex Bowman, who collected both Kyle Busch and Stuart Friesen, and taken all 3 of them off the circuit, which allowed Zane Smith to just pass by them and eventually win the race. Now, for the standings, even though he won, Zane Smith isn't actually in the lead of the championship, but another Smith is, and that is Chandler Smith. He is followed by Ben Rhodes, and in the 3rd place we have the aforementioned Stuart Friesen, Canadian, and then we have Zane Smith. If in 5th place is Tanner Gray. For the Xfinity Truck Series, the winner was AJ Allmendinger, a name for you who followed kart back in the day and IndyCar might be familiar with. He won of course, the race and is now second in the championship behind Noah Gragson, who still retains his lead after 6 rounds of the Xfinity round. In third place is Ty Gibbs, then Justin Allgaier in fourth, and Josh Berry is then fifth. So, the other notable, events, if you will, from these 2 races were for the Truck Series, where a highly popular and very well-liked driver, Brad Perez, Brad as in Bradley and Brad as in, pastry. So he made his trucks debut and actually finished in the top 20, which is pretty decent for a complete rookie. So yeah, kudos to Brad Perez. And the other highlight for me, at least, was in the Xfinity Series, where the Stock Car Brazil driver Miguel Paludo managed to come home in 9th. I don't think this is his first race, but it's definitely his best result of the season. And then let's move on to the Texas Grand Prix for the NASCAR Cup Series. Whew, oh boy, what a race this was. So, Ryan Blaney took pole, which made me happy because I love the man. However, he was quickly passed by Daniel Suarez, who actually managed to lead, I think, the entirety of the first stage. He, however, wouldn't be so lucky in the second stage because he was caught up, I think, in some sort of an incident, got a puncture and finished way down the order. Luckily for Suarez, his teammate Ross Chastain was there to pick up the pieces, and boy did he pick up the pieces. He also blew other cars into pieces, but he picked up the pieces nonetheless. This was all good news for Trackhouse Racing Team, a team which is, by the way, co-owned by the rapper Pitbull. And of course, with Chastain then having quite a decent second stage, I think he was maybe in 8th at one point. He then managed to get straight to the lead and then had a epic, absolutely blinding battle with the aforementioned AJ Allmendinger, who won the Xfinity Series. So he was looking to extend, his winning streak by winning 2 races in one day, which would be quite amazing, I must say. Their battle for the lead for the last couple of laps was nothing short of amazing. The defensive driving, the attacking maneuvers, the overtakes, and, the cautions as well. Now, this may be coming from a Formula 1 fan, which I have been for a long time, where you have just local yellow flags in the actual place where the incident occurred, rather than throwing out the full course caution like NASCAR does, and of course bringing out the pace car, or the safety car, if you will. Granted, for incidents like Bubba Wallace, who lost the wheel on the circuit as well, yes, probably Formula 1 would have done the same thing, but you have this epic battle between 2 guys looking, to, win the race, and all of a sudden, some half a track behind them, somebody spins out or collects another driver, and then you have a full course caution. It it of course makes the race last longer, but it also kind of kills the momentum. So this is an epic battle for the lead, and it's a minor incident, but then a safety car is out. But like I said, I'm maybe coming for Formula 1. So then, let's go back to Chastain and Allmendinger battle. So it's now a couple of laps before the end. Chastain is in the lead. He's looking to have the measure of Allmendinger. Whatever Allmendinger tries, Chastain answers. There was a moment when I think Allmendinger sent it. Chastain tried to block. Both of them went wide, and then Tyler Reddick just swooped past both of them to take the lead, which of course they didn't like. Now, I think in that period there was, just after Reddick took the lead, there was another caution, and he was then quickly passed by both Allmendinger and Chastain come the restart, or maybe in the pit lane, I cannot really remember. So then that left Chastain and Allmendinger with Alex Bowman waiting in the wings. And again, going into, on the final lap, that is, going into turn 15, Allmendinger bumps Chastain, sending him off the circuit. Nothing too major. He was able to immediately rejoin back, but Bowman took the position as well from Chastain. So, in response, chasing for his first ever Cup win series, Chastain in turn bumps Allmendinger, which causes Allmendinger to not have proper steering, and in turn 19, Chastain you can see him bump racing Allmendinger, and then just fully sends it into Allmendinger, who then in turn, unable to steer properly, slams into Bowman, slides out on the gravel, and in the end he was classified as 33rd. Now, from the severity of the hit, Bowman's car was actually smoking as he was running out the final corner, which then saw Ross Chastain, the Watermelon Man, coming home to take his first ever Cup Series victory and his team's first ever Cup race victory. So, of course, for his efforts, he earns for the second week running Driver of the Day. Just the consistency he's been displaying so far is pretty amazing. So, in the 6 races so far, he has 4 consecutive top 3 finishes. I think the consistency speaks for itself. Of course, not so much for Allmendinger. I'm guessing he wasn't happy. I wouldn't be. But he's not competing for the championship. Chastain is, and I kind of understand where he was coming from. Bowman has a victory, so again, that attempt just when Allmendinger went into Bowman. Again, I think these guys actually would made for quite an awesome curling team. So imagine NASCAR curling team going to the Olympics or something. But yes, Chastain, Driver of the Day, second week in a row. His teammate, however, is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Daniel Suarez, loser of the day. So, the Cup Series sees Chase Elliott still retain his lead and finally get a top 5 finish. He finished 4th, and this is his first top 5 finish this season. So then, of course, we have Ross Chastain coming home in first, followed by Alex Bowman in second, with Christopher Bell finishing third. The aforementioned Chase Elliott finally breaking through, like I said, into the top 5 with a 4th place finish. In 5th place was Tyler Reddick. Also pretty decent showing. I think Reddick is a rookie, if I'm not mistaken. In 6th place was the pole sitter Ryan Blaney, followed by Martin Truex Jr. Then we had Austin Cindric, who won the Daytona 500, the Great American Race, earlier in the season, with the wholesome man himself, Eric Jones, in 9th. And then running off the top 10, we have Austin Dillon. So, like I said, Chase Elliott still retains his lead in the championship. In the second, we have Ryan Blaney, with third place going to Joey Logano, who had a frankly ordinary week, and I think he was taken out at one point in the Texas race. Then in 4th is Alex Bowman, and in 5th, now the brand new race winner, Ross Chastain. Now, interestingly, only Chastain and Bowman, so the bottom 2 of the top 5 drivers, have actually scored victories. So the NASCAR point system is actually something that intrigues me as a fairly new fan to the sport, so I might actually do a piece on the NASCAR point system, and if I find it interesting enough, I'll make a video about it as well. So then, let's move on from road racing to off-road racing, namely let's move on to the European Rally Championship, Round 2, Portugal. So, Round 2 of the European Rally Championship saw the contestants remain in Portugal, albeit this time in the Azore Islands in the Atlantic Ocean, which provides with a pretty good backdrop. So the scenery was also quite impressive as well. I wasn't sold as much on the scenery as it was with the 100 Acres Rally, which was held in the United States for their ARA Championship. However, still, it was quite a decent backdrop. Now, like I said, I don't have live coverage of this championship as well, unfortunately, so I had to rely on the highlights. Now, for the results, the Spanish pairing of Efren Llerena and his co-driveress, Sara Fernandez, Spanish pairing, of course, they have won this rally, followed by Ricardo Moura and his co-driver Antonio Costa, homegrown heroes, of course, Portuguese pairing, with the third place going to the Austrians, Simon Wagner and Gerhard Winter. Then we have Simone Tempestini and Sergiu Itu of Romania, and then Armindo Araujo and his co-driver Luis Ramalho, who are actually championship leaders at this point and are also from Portugal. Now, all top 5 in the Azore Rally were actually driving a Skoda, albeit for different teams, but the manufacturer was Skoda. So, that would be about it for the racing week behind us. Next week, again, there is no Formula 1 and there is no IndyCar. However, there will be NASCAR, MotoGP, and some other little bit of racing as well. MotoGP is going to Argentina and NASCAR is visiting Richmond. So then, stay tuned to find out what's going to happen in that week as well. In the meantime, leave your opinions, comments down below. Hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and until next time, I bid you farewell.